December 24, 1944. Dawn hangs low over the Ardennes forest. The snow is not falling anymore. It is suspended, drifting like ash over shattered trees. Engines idle somewhere beyond the white horizon. A column of American trucks crawls forward, exhaust rising in thick gray plumes that cling to the cold air. In the half-light, a lone German staff car sits angled off the road, its windshield fractured, one door hanging open. A boot crunches into the snow beside it. Another, then another. American infantry surround the vehicle in silence, rifles steady, breath fogging the air. Inside, General Hasso von Manteuffel does not move at first. His gloves are dusted with frost. The map on his lap trembles slightly, not from fear, but from cold that has seeped into bone. He hears the metal click of a safety being released. Outside, a voice calls in accented German. "General, please step out." He closes his eyes briefly. Not surrender. Recognition. The Ardennes offensive, Germany's last gamble in the West, had begun with shock and speed. For a few violent days, momentum felt real again. Columns of armor pushed through mist and forest. American lines fractured. Reports of surprise, confusion, retreat. For a moment, the war seemed to bend backward. But now the roads are clogged not with victory, but with stalled vehicles, frozen fuel lines, and exhausted men. Manteuffel steps from the car. The air cuts like glass. Snow creaks under his boots. American soldiers watch him carefully, but there is no triumph in their faces. Only method. Efficiency. One soldier takes his pistol. Another checks his coat for documents. A third gestures toward awaiting transport. It is not chaos. It is process. You can feel it in the silence. This is an army that does not rush. As he is led forward, Manteuffel glances down the road. Through drifting snow he sees shapes emerging from the haze. Trucks. Dozens. Then hundreds. Canvas-covered cargo, fuel tankers, armored vehicles moving in disciplined intervals. No shouting. No confusion. Just motion. An officer beside him speaks quietly in English. Orders flow down the line like electricity through wire. The general says nothing. But he watches. The convoy does not end. They drive for hours. The transport truck vibrates constantly, metal frame rattling against frozen ground. Guards speak little. Through a narrow slit in the canvas, Manteuffel studies the passing landscape. Forest gives way to open roads. Open roads give way to staging areas. Staging areas give way to something else entirely. Columns of supplies appear first, crates stacked in geometric precision. Fuel drums aligned like soldiers in formation. Bulldozers pushing snow from temporary depots already larger than German forward bases at their peak. He has commanded armored divisions across Europe. He has seen logistics under strain. He knows what scarcity looks like: ration fuel, delayed ammunition. Tanks immobilized not by enemy fire, but by empty reserves. This is not scarcity. This is abundance organized into geometry. The truck slows as they pass a repair yard. Mechanics in heavy coats work without pause. A Sherman tank sits with its engine compartment open, tools arranged on clean canvas sheets despite the mud beneath. Nearby, another vehicle rolls out fully repaired. No celebration, just replacement. Movement without emotion. You can almost feel the weight of it pressing against him, a system too large to notice individual loss. The convoy halts at a checkpoint. Snow has thickened again, muffling sound. Somewhere in the distance, artillery rumbles, but it feels remote, irrelevant to the immediate reality unfolding before him. An American lieutenant offers him a canteen. Not mockery, not ceremony, routine. He accepts. Water is warm. That detail lingers. Warm water, in winter, near the front. A trivial comfort, and yet impossible to ignore. He thinks of German units rationing fuel for heating, of engines left silent to preserve reserves, of trucks abandoned when supply lines thinned beyond recovery. The vehicle resumes movement. They crest a ridge, and then he sees it. At first it resembles a frozen valley, pale shapes stretching to the horizon. But as the truck descends, detail sharpens. The valley is filled with equipment. Not scattered, not improvised. Ordered. Countless rows of vehicles, fuel containers, artillery shells, spare parts, bridging materials, tents, generators. Miles of supply. You do not comprehend it immediately. The mind searches for boundaries. There are none. An American soldier notices his gaze and follows it. For a moment, their eyes meet. The soldier does not smile. He simply nods, as if acknowledging something obvious. This is how we fight. The truck stops at a processing point. Papers are checked. Names recorded. The routine continues with mechanical calm. No urgency. No fear that supplies might run short tomorrow. No sense that each resource must be protected like a final reserve. Because there is always more. As he waits, Manteuffel hears the distant roar of aircraft overhead. He looks up. Through a break in the clouds, formations pass in steady intervals. Not a single squadron. A stream. Engines layered one atop another, a constant pulse in the sky. Air power sustained by the ground below. He has read intelligence reports. He has studied production estimates. He knows the numbers on paper. But paper does not convey scale. Paper does not convey continuity. Paper does not show how an army breathes when supply is infinite. A staff officer approaches with a clipboard. Formalities are brief. Rank acknowledged. Personal effects catalogued. Courtesy maintained. Professionalism mirrors professionalism. Yet beneath that surface, a quiet calculation begins. He has spent years measuring strength in divisions, tactics, terrain. But his strength is something else entirely, an invisible infrastructure that does not break when attacked. Destroy one depot, another replaces it. Destroy 100 vehicles, more arrive. War reduced to arithmetic. The general is escorted to a temporary command structure. Inside, heat hums steadily from portable units. Maps cover entire walls. Colored lines shift not with desperation, but with coordination. Telephones ring and are answered without urgency. An operations officer speaks into a headset. Supply confirmed. Route open. Simple words. Absolute implication. Outside, trucks continue arriving. Always arriving. Manteuffel removes his gloves slowly. His fingers ache as warmth returns. He studies a map pinned to a board. Lines representing routes, depots, reserves. Each symbol small. Together, overwhelming. A memory surfaces. German staff conferences debating whether a single armored thrust could break Allied momentum. Arguments over fuel allocations measured in days. Decisions shaped by what could not be replaced. Here, replacement is assumed. He is offered food, coffee, bread still soft despite the cold. Again, routine. Again, warmth where hardship should dominate. You can almost hear the unspoken contrast forming in his mind. Not envy, not admiration, but recognition. Outside the structure, the valley stretches endlessly. Workers move between stacks, forklifts lifting crates with methodical rhythm. No cheering. No urgency. Just continuation. He steps toward the entrance, pauses, and looks once more across the supply fields. A single question forms, though he does not voice it. How do you defeat a force that grows stronger each day it fights? Behind him, an American officer speaks quietly with another guard. The words are indistinct, but the tone carries calm confidence. The sound of men who expect tomorrow to arrive fully provisioned. Manteuffel watches another convoy crest the ridge. New trucks, new fuel, new ammunition. The stream does not thin. It widens. And for the first time since the offensive began, the general does not think about tactics. He thinks about inevitability. Because what stands before him is not an army. It is capacity. And capacity does not retreat. Snow begins to fall again, soft and relentless, settling over machines that will move regardless. He remains still as flakes gather on his coat, eyes fixed on the horizon where supply lines disappear into white distance. Somewhere beyond that horizon lies the future of the war. He understands that now. But understanding is not yet acceptance. Not yet. A staff car pulls up behind him. An officer gestures politely. "General, we must continue." He nods once and steps forward. As he enters the vehicle, the engine starts instantly. Warm, ready, fueled. The convoy ahead begins moving again, seamless, uninterrupted. The road leads deeper into Allied territory, deeper into realization. And what he will see next will not be weapons, but the system that makes endless war possible. The staff car descends deeper into the valley. Snow muffles, the engines growl, but nothing can soften what surrounds them. Supply stacks rise like frozen cliffs on either side of the road. Fuel drums tower in perfect columns. Wooden crates stretch outward in grids, so precise they resemble city blocks. Even the tire tracks in the snow form repeating patterns, order imposed on chaos. You feel the scale before you understand it. The vehicle passes a refueling station assembled in open ground. Tankers roll in empty. They roll out full. No waiting lines. No shouting mechanics. Pumps operate with steady rhythm. Hoses flexing like arteries, feeding a living organism. Manteuffel leans slightly forward. He notices something subtle. Nothing appears guarded in desperation. Sentries are present, yes, alert, professional, but not anxious. There is no frantic protection of dwindling resources. The supply itself is the defense. Loss is acceptable because replacement is guaranteed. A German officer learns early that supply is vulnerability. Here, supply is confidence. The car slows near a rail junction carved hastily into frozen earth. Locomotives idle with a deep metallic hum. Steam billows upward, dissolving into low clouds. Flat cars unload tanks, trucks, artillery pieces, not damaged equipment for repair, but new arrivals. Brand new machines delivered directly to the front. A crane lifts an armored vehicle from its carriage and places it onto prepared ground. Workers guide it with calm gestures. Documentation is signed. Engines start. The machine joins a growing line of operational armor. No ceremony. No pause. Production does not end at the factory. It extends here to the edge of battle. Manteuffel watches a group of mechanics replacing treads on a Sherman tank. Their hands move quickly, but without tension. Tools are clean. Spare parts lie organized on tarps. A young American soldier wipes grease from his gloves and laughs at something unheard. He does not look like a man preserving a final reserve. He looks like a man performing routine maintenance on equipment that will always exist. The general feels the contrast like pressure in his chest. He remembers winter on the Eastern Front. Frozen engines abandoned because replacement parts never arrived. Tanks immobilized for weeks while crews scavenged components from wreckage. Orders shaped not by strategy but by scarcity. Here, scarcity has no presence. The convoy moves again. They pass rows of artillery shells stacked head-high across open ground. Each stack marked, cataloged, accessible. Nearby, bulldozers clear snow continuously, ensuring access routes remain open. Fuel heaters run without hesitation. Generators hum. Power is constant. He counts without meaning to. Tens of thousands. Then he stops counting. The car approaches a ridge overlooking a wider basin. From this vantage point, the valley reveals its true dimension. Roads intersect like arteries, feeding a massive heart. Trucks stream in from multiple directions. Some carry ammunition. Others carry rations. Others carry nothing at all, returning to collect more. Supply in motion. Supply at rest. Supply preparing to move again. A system with no idle state. You can almost sense the rhythm beneath it. Intake, distribution, renewal. An American officer seated opposite him studies paperwork calmly. His gloved hand turns pages without haste. He is not managing a crisis. He is managing continuity. Manteuffel's gaze returns to the horizon. There is no visible boundary to the depot. It simply fades into snowfall and distance. as though the landscape itself produces material. He speaks for the first time since capture. "How long has this been here?" The officer glances up, considering the question. His reply is quiet, matter-of-fact. "Long enough." Not pride, not explanation, just certainty. They continue forward. At a junction, traffic halts briefly. Engines idle. The delay is orderly, almost rehearsed. Vehicles maintain spacing with instinctive precision. When movement resumes, it does so fluidly, without signal or urgency. Even pause is controlled. The general notices a detail that unsettles him more than the vastness: redundancy. For every depot, there appears another beyond it. For every route, an alternate path already prepared. Bridges stored in segments, ready for assembly. Spare tires stacked beside spare engines, beside spare vehicles. Not merely supply, resilience. He begins to understand that destruction alone cannot cripple such a system. It absorbs loss, redistributes, continues. The car passes a medical station. Tents glow warmly from within. Orderlies move with calm efficiency, guiding wounded soldiers from ambulances that never stop arriving. Medical supplies are abundant, organized, accessible. Recovery is expected, not hoped for. Even survival is systematized. Manteuffel's gloved hand tightens slightly around his knee. He does not feel anger. He does not feel humiliation. What he feels is something colder. Calculation encountering inevitability. Beyond the medical tents, a communications hub rises. Antennas extending into gray sky, cables running across snow like veins. Messages flow constantly between front and rear. Information moves as freely as fuel. War here is not fragmented. It is unified. The convoy crests another rise. And then he sees the fuel fields. Thousands of drums arranged in endless symmetry. Each marked, catalogued, protected from freezing. Tankers move between them with measured precision. Pipelines extend outward, temporary yet stable, feeding distribution points across miles of front. Fuel, the lifeblood of mechanized warfare, present in quantities beyond imagination. He recalls staff meetings where commanders argued over allocations measured in hours of movement. Here, movement is assumed without limit. The realization deepens, not as a sudden revelation, but as accumulation, observation led upon observation until denial has no ground left. He studies the American soldiers working among the drums. They do not guard them like treasure. They treat them like inventory, expendable because they are replaceable. A gust of wind sweeps snow across the field. For a moment, visibility drops. When it clears, the landscape remains unchanged. The system does not falter. Inside the car, warmth spreads slowly through his uniform. Heat is constant. Fuel is plentiful. Comfort is routine. He remembers German vehicles abandoned during the offensive because engines could not be kept running overnight. He remembers divisions halted not by resistance but by empty tanks. The contrast is no longer abstract. It is physical. They approach a command checkpoint larger than the previous ones. Officers move between structures with purposeful calm. Maps update continuously. Supply columns are rerouted in real time. Decisions appear guided not by desperation but by optimization. War managed like industry. The staff car stops. Papers are exchanged. An American major leans toward the window, nods respectfully, then steps back. The barrier lifts immediately. Authority here flows smoothly because confidence underlies it. As the vehicle rolls forward, Manteuffel notices something unexpected. Silence within himself. Not shock. Not disbelief. Those reactions have passed. What remains is synthesis. He is no longer observing individual depots or vehicles. He is seeing connection, production, transport, distribution, repair, replacement, all functioning simultaneously. A single organism composed of steel and motion. He realizes that battlefield victories against such a system do not reduce its strength. They trigger its response. And response here is always greater than loss. The convoy enters a narrower road bordered by snow-covered forest. For a moment, The valley disappears behind trees. The visual magnitude fades. Only the hum of engines remains. Yet the impression does not fade. You can feel it lingering, the weight of something too vast to confront directly. After several minutes, the forest opens again. Ahead lies another staging area even larger than the last. Trucks unload bridging equipment beside stacks of prefabricated structures. Engineers assemble components with methodical speed. Preparation not for current battle, but for battles not yet begun. The future is being supplied in advance. Manteuffel inhales slowly. Cold air enters his lungs despite the warmth inside the car. He does not need confirmation. He does not need numbers. He has seen enough. But what he has seen raises a question more unsettling than any battlefield outcome. If an enemy cannot be exhausted, what strategy remains? The staff car turns toward a permanent command facility in the distance, larger, more organized, humming with coordinated activity. Whatever understanding awaits him, there will not come from observation alone. It will come from confrontation. And confrontation, he senses, will not be with weapons. It will be with reality. The command facility stands on level ground at the edge of the basin, its structure temporary, but its function unmistakably permanent. Antennas rise into the gray sky. Cables run beneath packed snow. Trucks arrive, unload, depart, a constant pulse of motion that never seems to begin or end. Inside, warmth settles heavily in the air. Not the uneven heat of a field stove, but steady, regulated temperature. Tables are arranged in deliberate rows. Telephones rest beside clipboards. Maps dominate entire walls, not symbolic diagrams, but living documents marked with colored lines that shift with quiet precision. No one raises their voice. Orders move through the room the way fuel moves through pipelines, continuously, efficiently, without spectacle. Manteuffel is escorted past operations desks where officers calculate distribution routes with mechanical calm. Numbers are recorded. Routes confirmed. Supplies allocated not with hesitation, but with assumption of availability. A colonel pauses beside a map and adjusts a marker representing armored reserves. He does not debate whether the reserve exists. He adjusts where it will go. This distinction does not escape the general. He has commanded armies where planning begins with limitation. Here, planning begins with possibility. A staff officer offers him a chair near a long table. Papers are spread across its surface, shipping schedules, inventory reports, projected consumption rates. He does not need to read English to understand their purpose. Columns of numbers extend downward in ordered certainty. Consumption measured. Replacement guaranteed. You can almost hear the logic forming behind his stillness, war reduced to input and output. Through an open doorway, he sees a communications team receiving transmissions from forward units. Requests are logged, verified, fulfilled. The interval between need and response appears measured in minutes, not days. Speed not of decision, but of fulfillment. He remembers orders delayed because rail lines were destroyed, because fuel trains never arrived, because supply convoys vanished under air attack. Strategy collapsing under logistical absence. Here, absence is anticipated and compensated before it occurs. A young American officer enters, carrying a clipboard thick with reports. He confides briefly with another officer, points to a map, nods once, and exits. The exchange is brief but complete. Information flows without friction. Friction, the hidden enemy of command, appears absent here. Manteufel's gaze shifts to a wall displaying production figures from factories far beyond the front. Vehicles completed. Ammunition manufactured. Replacement parts shipped. The numbers are not inspirational. They are operational. War is being fed from a distance too vast. He studies a projection of future supply needs extending weeks ahead. Weeks, not days. Planning sustained by certainty. For the first time, a memory intrudes with unusual clarity. A staff conference months earlier, where commanders debated whether one decisive blow could force Allied collapse. The assumption underlying every argument was that the enemy's capacity could be strained, broken, exhausted. He now sees the error. Capacity that expands under pressure cannot be exhausted. An American major approaches respectfully. He speaks calmly, gesturing toward a large operational map. The tone is professional, devoid of triumph. The map shows front lines, supply corridors, reinforcement routes extending backward across vast territory. The general listens without responding. He is not being briefed on tactics. He is being exposed to structure. Behind the major's explanation lies a simple principle: continuity over victory. Win engagements, yes, but more importantly, ensure the ability to fight indefinitely. The room hums quietly with generators beneath the floor. Power does not flicker. Lights remain steady. Even illumination reflects reliability. Outside, engines continue their constant rhythm. Inside, planning mirrors that rhythm. He notices something unexpected. No one appears burdened by uncertainty. Not because danger is absent, but because response is prepared. Preparedness transforms risk into calculation. He rises slowly and walks toward the map wall. A guard accompanies him, not restraining, merely present. The general studies the colored lines marking supply flow. Each line branches into others, forming a network that resembles circulation within a living body. Destroy a branch, flow redirects. Sever a path, another carries the load. War here is not linear. It is systemic. He speaks quietly, almost to himself. This cannot be stopped. The guard does not respond. He does not need to. Outside the facility, snow continues falling over the valley of supplies. Workers move through it without hesitation, maintaining the rhythm that sustains everything beyond. Manteuffel returns to the table and studies the columns of numbers again. He is no longer searching for weakness. He is searching for limit. He does not find one. A realization begins to take shape, not dramatic, not sudden. It emerges the way frost forms across glass, gradually obscuring previous perception. Battlefields decide engagements. Industry decides outcomes. He recalls armored advances halted by empty reserves, divisions immobilized by mechanical failure, offensives constrained by the simple arithmetic of consumption exceeding supply. Here, arithmetic favors continuation. The implication extends beyond any single front. It extends beyond tactics, beyond commanders, beyond even current battles. It describes a trajectory. The war is not being fought day to day. It is being sustained year to year. An officer enters carrying fresh reports. He distributes copies across the table. No tension accompanies their arrival. No urgency signals crisis. Information arrives as regularly as supply. Routine replaces uncertainty. Manteuffel senses the final barrier within his reasoning begin to dissolve, the belief that determination alone can overcome material disparity. Courage, maneuver, leadership, all essential, all meaningful, but insufficient against inexhaustible capacity. He walks toward a window overlooking the valley. Snow softens the outlines of stacked supplies, but the scale remains unmistakable. Trucks continue their steady approach along distant roads. Movement without end. You can almost feel the weight of future battles already supplied, already prepared, already inevitable. Behind him, conversation continues in measured tones. Planning extends beyond current operations to those yet to begin. The present is merely one stage in a continuum sustained by abundance. He understands now why defeat does not appear on these faces. Not arrogance, assurance. They are not hoping to win. They are equipped to outlast. The general places his gloved hand lightly against the cold glass. Outside, engines start, move, stop, repeat. A cycle as regular as breath. War, he realizes, has become arithmetic. And arithmetic does not negotiate. A quiet thought settles with irreversible clarity. Strategy cannot compensate for absence of capacity. And capacity here is limitless compared to his own. Behind him, an officer's voice announces updated supply projections. Numbers increase. Allocations expand. Future operations receive confirmation before they begin. The system does not merely support war. It guarantees its continuation. Manteuffel lowers his hand from the window. Acceptance has not yet been spoken. But it is approaching, step by step, observation by observation, number by number. And when acceptance arrives, it will not concern a single battle. It will concern the war itself. Outside, another convoy crests the ridge, disappearing into the valley like a river flowing toward an ocean without shore. He watches until it vanishes from sight. Then he turns away, because what he must confront next is not what he has seen, but what it means. Late afternoon settles over the depot. Light fades into a dull steel gray, yet activity does not slow. Flood lamps flicker on across the valley, illuminating rows of supplies in cold white brilliance. Night does not interrupt the system. It merely changes the lighting. Inside the command facility, the rhythm continues unchanged. Telephones ring. Messages arrive. Orders flow outward. The machinery of coordination hums with steady confidence. Manteuffel stands alone near a map table. He is no longer observing as a prisoner. He is observing as a commander, one final time. His mind moves instinctively through possibilities. Counteroffensives. Strategic withdrawals. Concentrated armored thrusts. Each scenario forms with professional clarity and dissolves just as quickly. Every plan encounters the same barrier. Replacement. Destroy fuel, more arrives. Destroy vehicles, more roll forward. Delay supply, alternate routes compensate. He does not feel dismay. He feels precision, the kind that arrives when illusion has no space left to stand. An American officer approaches quietly and gestures toward a large logistics chart pinned to the wall. Consumption rates, reinforcement schedules, production inflow. The officer explains calmly, not to persuade, but to inform. His tone is respectful, almost conversational. Numbers, not rhetoric. Manteuffel studies the chart. He traces the flow from factories across the Atlantic, through ports, across rail lines, into forward depots, then outward to combat units. The chain is uninterrupted, every link reinforced by another. He imagines severing one segment. The system reroutes. He imagines severing several. The system compensates. He imagines destroying entire networks. Still, production continues. For the first time, he understands that what he faces is not a front line. It is an ecosystem. War sustained not by bravery alone, but by continuous creation. Outside, night deepens. Snow reflects artificial light, turning the valley into a vast field of pale radiance. Vehicles move through illuminated corridors like currents within a living organism. He steps outside. Cold air fills his lungs. The sky is low and colorless. Engines vibrate through the ground beneath his boots. You can almost feel the pulse of motion through the earth itself. He walks a short distance from the facility, escorted but unrestrained. The guards remain silent, allowing observation to continue. Ahead of him stretches an uninterrupted horizon of supply. Fuel drums cast long shadows beneath floodlights. Crates rise in ordered rows. Workers move without urgency, without fatigue visible in their motion. Nothing suggests strain. He remembers German units fighting brilliantly under impossible conditions, improvising repairs, rationing ammunition, advancing despite scarcity. Heroism born from necessity. Here, necessity has been removed from calculation. War has become sustainable. A transport aircraft roars overhead, its lights blinking steadily through cloud cover. Another follows. Then another. The sky itself participates in the supply chain. He realizes that battlefield outcomes no longer determine momentum. Momentum exists independently, sustained by production beyond the reach of the front. His gaze returns to the fuel fields. Each drum represents movement. Each vehicle represents continuation. Each crate represents future action already prepared. He speaks quietly, almost without sound. It cannot be revised. The words do not carry emotion. They carry conclusion. A gust of wind sweeps snow across the illuminated ground. For a moment, visibility blurs. When it clears, the system remains unchanged, unwavering, constant. Inside his mind, a final calculation resolves. Victory requires exhaustion of the opponent. but an opponent that grows stronger through time cannot be exhausted. The implication settles with absolute clarity. The war's outcome is no longer determined by battlefield performance. It is determined by capacity. He feels no bitterness, only recognition. The same recognition a strategist experiences when a maneuver fails not from error, but from impossibility. Behind him, the command facility glows steadily. Within it, planning extends weeks ahead. Outside it, supply extends beyond sight. Past, present, future, all linked by continuity. He looks once more across the valley. Snow continues falling, yet nothing slows. Machines operate. Workers move. Trucks arrive. Trucks depart. War here does not struggle to continue. It persists naturally. A memory surfaces unexpectedly. The early days of the Ardennes offensive. Surprise, momentum, belief that speed and shock might fracture Allied resolve. For a brief moment, possibility seemed real. But possibility requires vulnerability, and he now sees none. The realization does not arrive as shock. It arrives as silence, the silence that follows the end of argument. He turns back toward the facility. Each step feels deliberate, grounded not in defeat, but in comprehension. Inside, an officer updates a map marker representing supply projections for upcoming operations. The marker shifts slightly forward. Future movement already secured. Manteuffel pauses beside the table and studies the map once more. Lines extend across Western Europe with unwavering continuity. There are no gaps, only direction. He removes his gloves slowly and places them on the table. His hands are steady. A war once defined by maneuver has become defined by mathematics. And mathematics has delivered its answer. He does not announce realization. He does not record it. He simply carries it, the quiet knowledge that strategy cannot alter structural reality. Outside, the valley glows under artificial light, a monument to sustained power. Inside, planning continues for battles yet to be fought. He understands that those battles will occur. He also understands how they will end. Because the decisive engagement has already taken place, not on a battlefield, but within the balance between production and consumption. And that balance is irreversible. A distant convoy enters the valley, headlights cutting through snowfall in perfect alignment. The general watches them approach. He is no longer studying the enemy. He is witnessing inevitability. What remains is not resistance, but consequence. Night deepens, but the valley does not sleep. Floodlights hum overhead, casting hard shadows across snow-packed ground. Engines idle in disciplined intervals. Cranes pivot slowly, lowering cargo with mechanical patience. Somewhere metal strikes metal, not violently, but rhythmically, like a clock that cannot be stopped. Inside the command facility, a new shift takes position, without ceremony. Fresh officers replace those who have worked since morning. The transition is seamless. War continues as if governed by schedule rather than circumstance. General Hasso von Manteuffel sits at a plain table near the wall. No restraints. No interrogation. Only time and observation. He studies the movement outside through a frost-lined window. What once appeared overwhelming now appears structured. Patterns emerge. Supply arrives in predictable cycles. Distribution flows outward in measured waves. Replacement follows loss before loss can accumulate. He understands something new. This system does not react to war. It anticipates it. A staff officer nearby speaks into a telephone, confirming readiness for operations planned days ahead. Not contingency, certainty. Units not yet engaged already possess what they will need. The future has been provisioned. Manteuffel lowers his gaze to the table surface. His reflection wavers faintly in the polished metal. For a moment, memory overlaps with present reality. He sees armored columns advancing through dense forest at dawn. He hears engines struggling in freezing air. He recalls reports of fuel reserves measured in hours, not days. He remembers decisions made under constraint, bold, desperate, necessary. Here, constraint has been removed from command. He realizes that courage changes when survival is supported by abundance. Strategy changes when continuation is guaranteed. He rises and approaches the map wall again. Colored lines extend across Western Europe, each representing flow of fuel, ammunition, vehicles, food, communication. The lines do not converge on a single decisive point. They extend every way simultaneously. There is no center to strike. He traces one route with his eyes from distant ports to forward combat units. The path is not fragile. It is led, rail, road, depot, distribution hub. Remove one layer, another absorbs its function. War sustained through redundancy. A young American captain enters, glances at the general briefly, then continues working without hesitation. There is no sense of guarding a secret. Nothing here depends on concealment. Strength lies in visibility, in the open fact of inexhaustible capacity. Outside, snowfall thickens, yet vehicle movement does not slow. Snowplows clear routes continuously. Heated fuel lines prevent freezing. Maintenance crews rotate with precision. Even winter has been calculated into the system. He steps outside once more. Cold air sharpens every sound. Engines vibrate through the frozen ground. Light reflects from snow in endless repetition. You can almost feel the pressure of motion surrounding him, not aggressive, not chaotic, simply persistent. He walks a few paces toward a ridge overlooking the depot. Guards follow at a respectful distance. No urgency, no fear that he might escape. The environment itself imposes understanding. From this vantage, the scale is undeniable. Miles of material arranged with intention. Thousands of vehicles prepared not merely to fight, but to continue fighting after loss. A landscape transformed into capability. He considers, for the final time, the question every commander must answer. Where is the point of decision? Not here. Not in any single battle. The decision has already occurred. In factories, in shipyards, in rail networks, in the steady conversion of industry into power. He realizes that what he witnessed was not an enemy preparing for war. It was a civilization mobilized for endurance. A transport convoy passes beneath the ridge, headlights glowing through snow. Each truck identical in purpose, interchangeable in function. Individual units mean little. The system defines strength. He feels no anger toward the men operating it. They are components, just as he has been a component within his own command structure. War, stripped of illusion, becomes structure opposing structure. One structure adapts under pressure. The other collapses when pressure persists. He watches workers secure a line of fuel drums against rising wind. Their movements are calm, practiced, almost indifferent to the magnitude surrounding them. Abundance normalized becomes invisible. He exhales slowly. The air crystallizes before him and dissolves. The realization that began with observation now reaches conclusion. Defeat is not a moment. It is a condition that becomes visible only after comparison. Behind him, the command facility glows steadily against the dark horizon. Within it, planning continues beyond his presence, beyond his understanding, beyond his influence. He turns away from the ridge and walks back toward the light. Each step feels measured, not heavy. Acceptance has replaced calculation. Inside, an officer updates the operational map again. Supply routes remain intact. Future movements remain scheduled. Nothing in the room acknowledges finality, yet finality exists outside the awareness of those who sustain momentum. Manteuffel removes his coat and places it over the back of a chair. The warmth of the room contrasts with the cold clarity of his conclusion. He understands now that wars can end before armies stop fighting. He sits, folds his hands, and watches the steady flow of activity continue without interruption. No announcement marks the moment. No document records it. Yet the turning point has occurred, not in battle, but in comprehension. And what follows from comprehension is not resistance, but inevitability unfolding in time. Outside, another convoy arrives, headlights piercing the falling snow in perfect alignment. Inside, planning continues for victories already secured by capacity alone. The war, he knows, will proceed, but its outcome no longer resides in doubt. January 1st, 1945. Early morning. The storm has passed. Snow lies undisturbed across the valley, smooth and pale beneath the first light of dawn. For a moment, the world appears still. Then engines start. One by one, trucks ignite in quiet succession. Exhaust rises in slow columns that drift upward and dissolve into cold air. Workers emerge from heated tents. Lights switch off as daylight grows. The system transitions from night to day without interruption. Continuity unbroken. Inside the command facility, fresh reports arrive with the morning shift. Telephones ring. Clocks log movements. Maps are adjusted. Outside, columns begin moving toward the front. Not hurried, not dramatic, simply scheduled. General Hasso von Manteuffel stands near the window, watching the valley awaken into motion again. He no longer studies details. He studies rhythm. Everything operates within expectation. No crisis alters the pattern. No loss disrupts the flow. Even destruction, he now understands, has been integrated into planning. War has become maintenance. An American officer approaches and informs him quietly that he will be transferred to a rear holding facility later that day. The tone is respectful, procedural. Another movement within a system already in motion. He nods once. Outside, a line of fuel tankers moves steadily along a cleared route, their surfaces reflecting the pale morning light. Behind them, trucks carrying ammunition follow at measured intervals. Behind them, recovery vehicles. Behind them, engineers. Layer upon layer, function supporting function. He watches until the convoy disappears beyond the ridge. There is no emotion left in the observation. Only comprehension sustained by repetition. A war once defined by uncertainty now reveals itself as process. He steps outside for the final time. The cold air is sharper than before, yet he barely notices it. Sound carries clearly across the open ground. Engines, distant metal, measured footsteps. Snow crunches beneath his boots as he walks a few paces from the entrance. You can almost feel the immense weight of preparation surrounding him, not pressing down, but extending outward, endlessly. He turns slowly, taking in the full breadth of the valley. Supplies arranged with geometric precision. Vehicles aligned for movement. Workers already engaged in the day's routine. Nothing here suggests triumph. Nothing suggests strain. Only continuation. He recalls years of command shaped by maneuver, timing, terrain, the art of war practiced within limits. Yet here stands something beyond art. Structure replacing uncertainty. He understands now why battlefield victories no longer determine the trajectory of events. Because trajectory has already been secured by forces that do not appear on maps of engagement. Production, transport, replacement, endurance. He breathes in deeply, the air burning slightly in his lungs. The sensation grounds him in the present, a present that feels strangely detached from struggle. He realizes that what he witnessed was not an enemy stronger in any single moment. It was an enemy stronger across time. And time, once lost, cannot be regained through courage alone. Behind him, guards prepare for departure. A staff car waits, engine running smoothly, warmed and ready. Another element functioning exactly as designed. He walks toward it without hesitation. At the door, he pauses and looks back once more across the valley. The rising sun casts long shadows across ordered rows of material. Light reveals scale more clearly than darkness ever could. He does not search for weakness. He does not search for hope. He simply acknowledges what exists. Because understanding has replaced speculation. He enters the vehicle. The door closes with a muted, final sound. The engine shifts smoothly into motion. As the car begins to move, the valley recedes gradually behind him, not fading, but remaining exactly as it was, unchanged by his departure. Continuity does not depend on witness. The road curves upward along the ridge. From this elevation, the full scope of the depot is visible one last time, a vast network of preparation extending beyond sight. You can almost feel the silent conclusion settling into place. Not defeat declared. Defeat understood. As the vehicle crests the ridge, the valley disappears from view. Snow-covered forest replaces open ground. Sound diminishes. Only the steady hum of the engine remains. Inside the car, warmth surrounds him. Outside, winter persists. The war continues beyond the horizon, sustained by forces he has now measured without illusion. He closes his eyes briefly, not in exhaustion, but in completion of thought. The decisive moment required no battlefield. It required only comparison, and comparison has delivered its answer. The vehicle moves forward along the frozen road, carrying him away from the visible proof of inevitability and toward a future already determined by it. Behind him, supply flows. Ahead of him, consequence unfolds. The war will continue, but its outcome has already been calculated.